raspberry patch, cutting out ferns and other invasive type weeds. We've got the salmon net out, and hopefully it's catching salmon. Obviously, we now have a working boat since we have the net out for salmon. The welds John made on the heavy skiff were leak tested and the skiff was splashed. Once Alaska Fish and Game declared a commercial fishing closure, and the fishermen that own the set net site at the point picked up their net, John and Christy put their net out for subsistence fishing. The net is checked several times a day, and like the slow-starting garden, the salmon, too, are late in arriving this year. We don't know if the cause is due to the poor weather, but we haven't seen many seagulls, and so far, no whales. The first check of the net yielded just one red salmon and one pink salmon. Like just a big bite taken out of it.
Yeah, it looks like how the sharp edges looks like shark bite.
And in spite of the chunk taken out of it, enough of the fish remained for an enjoyable lunch with fresh greens from the hoop house. The net was put out over the course of several days, and the catch was disappointingly small. On some occasions, there were no fish in the net. At other times, there were 3 or 4 fish. Red salmon, also known as sockeye salmon, and pink salmon seem to be equally represented in the catch. I have always had trouble telling the difference between the two.
See the spots on the tail here.
And its scales are a lot smaller.
The scales are teeny little itsy bitsy scales and spots on the tail.
Otherwise, they look really similar.
No spots on the tail.
Oh, okay, there I see the spot.
And they're a smaller fish, too. Generally.
Between the pink salmon and the red salmon.
The pink looks anemic, doesn't it, compared to the red?
Normally, John smokes red salmon, but as we are short on reds, we experimented smoking pink salmon. The end result was pleasing and, in my book, just as delicious as red. Most of July continues to be cloudy and rainy. Happy 4th of July, everyone! On the 4th of July, while the rest of the country dealt with sweltering temperatures, we battled rain and wind to cross the strait to celebrate the holiday with neighbors on Spruce Island. With the unseasonable rain and bad weather, Christy brought up the remainder of last winter's wood from the woodshed to fire up the wood stove. The surround around the wood stove is built from interesting rock John and Christy collected from the nearby area, and the wood stove itself is much more substantial than the wood stove we had at our house in the California desert. With the fire going in the wood stove and the draft blocker in place, the house maintains a warm temperature and we felt snug and toasty. Another social outing we enjoyed involved pulling a spruce log across the strait to the native village of Uzinki. The log, which washed up last winter on the shore of the cove, was hitched to the truck and dragged down the streets to the house of Jean and Barb. John then cut the log into rounds, which will later be split for firewood. In return, Jean and Barb had a cedar log to trade, which we pulled back to the cove. John and Christy will eventually use the cedar for a building project, as cedar is more rot resistant than spruce. A resupply trip was made into Kodiak, and John took the opportunity to deliver fruit trees he had grafted to a local nursery. It was also an opportunity to refill one of the large propane tanks. Due to the state of the tide, hauling the tank up and down the ramp at the fuel dock was a treacherous business. Work has continued to progress on painting and putting up paneling in the barn. We have the added incentive to work hard in accomplishing this task, as guests are expected towards the end of the month. I have included in this video activities which might be of general interest, but for the most part, our days have fallen into a pattern of repetitive, routine tasks. The next video will have fun evenings on the beach with our guests and a wrap-up of our final days here at Sailboat Cove. So, until then,